They said telepaths had no need for whispers and no taste for drama, but I could feel the way her head tilted just slightly more when he passed by, the way her fingers brushed her datapad slower when she knew he was watching, the way their shared laughter didn't ripple into the air, but instead hummed in the low crackle of mental frequencies only they understood. And I wasn't supposed to hear anything, of course, since I was just a baseline human without cortical links or spirit nodes. But I felt it in my spine, in the heat she brought home, in the absent touches, and how she no longer met my gaze. After long shifts in the plasma labs where she and her assigned partner melded minds like scientists merge equations, she said it was harmless, that Varric was amusing, that it was just telepathic efficiency at work, just faster calculations and cleaner energy maps. But when I asked her why her pupils pulsed in time with his name, she had no answer, just silence, and that silence carried his signature somehow, as if his mind had pressed into hers and left fingerprints I couldn't erase. And maybe I could have lived with it. Maybe I could have swallowed the ache and stayed in my lane as the unlinked partner, as the body without the bond. But then came the nebula lights. The lights only happened once every 20 years, a shimmering celestial storm where gravity danced and colors bled from star to star. And the Federation hosted the Mind Union Gala beneath the veil of that storm, where every bonded pair stepped out into the drift fields and expressed their connection through the mind dance, a psychic movement of thought and emotion that required a meld of souls, not just steps and rhythm, but memory sharing, presence sharing. She said we wouldn't go. She said it was for linked pairs only, but I found the registry days later and saw her name and his listed together, not mine, not ours. And something inside me cracked, not in anger, in grief, but in clarity. Because if she would open her mind to another and share the dance of lights that belong to lovers, then I would not wait in the shadows, watching them twirl above me. I sent a request to the gala, not to her, to him, to his soul wife. Zevra was unlike any being I had ever met, not tall, not luminous, not visibly powerful. But her presence was a field of calm, slow exhale of starlight. And when she looked at me, I felt like she saw everything I hadn't said, everything I had been afraid to think. She received me with a quiet nod and a gesture of respect and common among her kind, for humans were often dismissed as thought blind, slow, dense. But she was not like the others, and she asked me without words why I had come, and I answered the same way with my truth. She let me in, not into her mind, but into the beginning of understanding, into the gateway where trust begins to burn. And then she said she would dance with me, that she would teach me to move not with steps, but with echoes, that I could learn not to be her partner, but to be a mirror, so that when the nebula lights came, I would not watch from below, I would rise. The path to mind dancing is not paved with logic, it is carved in vulnerability and silence. And each day I spent with Zevra stripped something away from me, not painfully, but honestly, like peeling away armor I never meant to wear. And she showed me how to listen not with ears, but with the bones of my soul, and how to speak without sound, without shape. And when I began to feel her thoughts like gliding birds just outside my reach, she nodded and said I was beginning. At night, we would sit beneath the twin suns of her home moon, and she would hum in harmonics that made the air ripple, and she would tell me of her bond with Varric, of its fading, how his light dimmed when my mate entered his orbit, and how her silence had not been pain, but preparation, because she too had known the slipping of love, the erosion of meaning. We danced once before the gala, just her and I in the dunes of spectral dust, and I felt my memories lift into the air, my childhood, my fears, my deepest longing to be seen. And I saw her too. I saw the ache she hid, the strength she carried, and the freedom she offered me, not as revenge, not as possession, but as balance. The gala was a galaxy in motion, ships like floating blossoms above a storm of shifting light and music that had no sound, only sensation. and every pair stepped out in turn into the zero field, and released their bond into the nebula for others to witness. And for moments I stood beside Zevra, waiting, watching, and then I saw her, my mate with Varric. Their minds entwined, their dance smooth, elegant, practiced, and when her eyes passed over me, I thought I saw guilt. But not enough to stop her, not enough to break away, and so I stepped forward and took Zevra's hand, and the mind dance began. It was not a war, not a challenge, not a show of dominance. It was a revelation of her soul, meeting mine of my pain, lifting into her warmth of our shared joy, threading through the nebula's fire. And the crowd turned, not in awe, but in recognition, because what we offered was not just beauty, it was truth. Raw, unfiltered, undeniable. After the gala, there were no confrontations, no grand words, no sudden apologies, only distance and silence between my mate and me. Because once you see someone open their entire being to another, and once you give yours in return, there is no going back, no pretending. She stayed with Varric. I did not mourn her, because I had found something else, not just Zevra, but a new shape of self. One that no longer needed to be less than anyone else's bondmate. I returned to the dunes of her home and watched the last echoes of the nebula lights fade into the stars, and she sat beside me without questions, without promises. Only presence, and that was more than enough.